Hey, boys and girls, it's Mr. Mac. Today we're going to be working on lesson 3 from module 17, which was assessing reasonableness of quotients. So when we talk about reasonableness, we're going to be talking about estimating. This section likes to talk about what we call compatible numbers, friendly numbers, numbers that are easy for us to work with. That's what's going to be our focus for today. So when I look at these examples, I want you guys to remember we're not going to do normal traditional rounding per se, but we're going to just look for numbers that are close to what we're dealing with to make this as easy as possible. All right, so problem number 1, it says a cook bought an envelope of the spice saffron. She wants to store equal amounts of the saffron in 8 glass jars. About how much saffron will the cook put in each jar? So obviously we have 1 9/10 ounces, and we're dividing that up amongst the 8 jars. So what's the expression we could use to model this? So I can't fit it in there, but I'm going to tell you it'd be 1 9/10 divided by 8. Okay, so when we're dealing with this problem, we want to know compatible. So in part B, it says a compatible number is close to the dividend and can be divided evenly by the divisor. How can we use compatible numbers to make your estimate? We have 1 9/10 as our dividend, okay? If we looked at that as just tenths, or we kind of ignored that decimal point for a minute here, that would be 19 tenths. Can 19 be divided equally by 8? No. So we want to try and think about what number close to 19 could be divided by 8. Well, I know if I do 8 times 2, that's going to give me 16. That's really close to 19. Now, you could also say, well, 24 is close, right? So you could do 24 divided by 8. But we want to be as close as possible. So for this one, we would change this to 1 6/10 divided by 8 for compatible numbers, because now I know that 16 divided by 8 is going to be 2, and I know that my decimal point would go right there. So my answer would be 2/10. So if we keep reading down on these problems, right, it does say what is a different compatible number. That's when we say, okay, well, 24 is also close. So we could say 24 divided by 8. 24 divided by 8 is 3, and that decimal goes right in the front to make 3/10. Okay, so we know that we have an estimate of 2/10, and we have another estimate of 3/10. Now, I know this is getting a little bit sloppy, but I just want to make sure the work is big enough for you to see, right? So now it says, is this estimate more or less than the actual amount, right? So for this problem, we took 1 9/10 and we rounded down, and we got 2/10. That would be what we call an underestimate. Why is it an underestimate? Because we took this number and we rounded it down to 1 6/10. So that would be our underestimate. For 2 4/10, that was rounded up. So this means this estimate would be an overestimate, because we are now lifting the dividend up, right? So it's a higher number. So that estimate's going to be an overestimate, right? So in this question where it says, is it greater than, more than, or less than the actual amount? This one will be less than, and this one will be greater than. So part F says the cook thinks that there will be about 2,300 ounce of saffron in each jar. Is this amount reasonable? Now, we're not saying is it the correct answer necessarily, but we're saying, is it reasonable? Well, let's look, guys. We had 23 hundredths. 23 hundredths falls between 2/10 and 3/10 because it's more than 2/10 because it's 23 hundredths, but it's less than 3/10 because, again, 2/10 is less than 3/10 there. Right. So that's the introduction kind of to this lesson for compatible numbers, is trying to find a way that we can change our dividend so that we could quickly divide by our divisor, sometimes even mentally, kind of like we did here. So let's look at this next problem with Marco's Pizzeria. So it says 23 friends decide to order some food. The friends decide to share the total cost evenly. About how much will each friend pay for the food? So we know that the total bill is 140. Oops. Erase that. Okay, total bill was $148.80, and we're going to divide that by the 23 friends. That's a lot of friends that go out to a pizza place, right? Okay, now we're getting a little bit more tricky because we're getting these bigger numbers, and how are we going to deal with that? Well, the first step that we would like to do for estimating is rounding this divisor. It says to what number could you round the divisor? Well, 23 would round to 20. Okay. Now, when we're looking at 20 and we're talking about estimating and reasonably, we want to now change this number, $148.80. We want to change that to something that could be divided by 20. So there's a couple things you could do here. You could count by 20s: 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140. Oh, look at that. I could change this number to 140. So if I change this to 140, just like this, now my new problem is 140 divided by 20. Okay, which I just said was 7. So my estimate would be 7. So about how much will each friend pay for the food? Each friend would pay about $7 there for the food. Okay, so that's one of those more challenging estimating problems where when you have those double-digit divisors, you round the divisor, and then you round the dividend to be something that can be divided by our divisor easily. All right, so now let's get into the check for understanding. It's a little bit more work here. So it says a ribbon is 42 hundredths meter long. Sean cuts the ribbon into 9 equal pieces. Is 5 hundredths meter a reasonable estimate for the length of each piece of ribbon? Explain. So again, we have 42 hundredths. We're dividing that up by 9 equal pieces. Okay. Now, again, we want to look at, okay, we have 9. What number close to 42 could be divided by 9? So we know that that's 45. So we have 45 hundredths. That looks like a 3 a little bit. Let me change that. 45 hundredths divided by 9. Okay, and we got to figure out what that's going to equal, right? So 9 can go into 45 5 times, and there's 2 numbers behind the decimal, so let's make sure there's 2 numbers behind the decimal here. So we get 500. So is his estimate a reasonable estimate? Yes, it absolutely is a reasonable estimate because 42 hundredths is close to 45 hundredths, and 45 hundredths divided by 9 is going to give you 5 hundredths there. All right, so we're going to head to another problem to keep working on because I want to give a couple examples to make sure that we can see these and truly understand what we're doing for today's lesson, because this is it. This is what you're going to use, and anything obviously that is available on Into Math for you. All right, so question number 4. Kathy pours equal amounts of water from the bucket into each of 7 bottles. So we have 6 and 5/10 liters, and we're dividing that by 7 bottles. So this is the type of problem where we want to look at the dividend like there's no decimal there and say, what is close to 65 that could be divided by 7? So this is where we need to know our facts for sevens. So we have 65 divided by 7. 65 is close to 63. So we have 6 and 3/10 divided by 7. Okay, so we know that 63 divided by 7 is 9. And then we put our decimal in and we get 9/10. So our answer would be about 9/10 into each bottle. All right. So again, when we have a 1-digit divisor, guys, we're just going to change our dividend. But if we have a 2-digit divisor, like some of the problems down here, like number 6, which is the next one we're going to do, then we would make sure to change round our divisor and then also change our dividend after that. Financial literacy. Ms. Smythe buys a bike on credit for $434. This is a big number, right? And 95 cents. Right? She's avoiding interest. She's going to make 12 equal payments. How much is one payment? So we have 12 here. Okay, so then we would change the 12 to be a 10. And what number close to this could be divided by 10? Well, we know 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. We could go all the way up if we wanted to, right? But we just know that this has to have a 0 in the ones place. So I would change this to be 430. And I would do 430 divided by 10. Well, if I'm working backwards, I know that 43 times 1 equals 43. Oops, ran out of space there a little bit. Let me try that again. Okay, so I would get 43. Okay, and I know if I add the 0, 1, it would give me 430. So my answer would be $43, right? Hopefully this is going to help you guys with today's lesson. We're going to deal with compatible numbers and estimating with the next lesson as well for 17-4. So just wanted to give you a little bit more of an explanation for this assignment, more so than I normally would. Okay. And like I said, check on Into Math for some practice problems and some videos that might be available as well. All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.